Why did every handler freeze when the dogs stopped moving? The rotors of the Chinook hammered the air like a countdown. Sand lifted in violent spirals, stinging exposed skin, turning breath into grit. Someone was shouting, orders probably, but it all blurred into a single sound: get out or die here. Master Sergeant Collins had evacuated under fire more times than he could count. He knew the rhythm. The panic before discipline snapped into place. The way men moved faster when fear finally caught up to them. But this was different. 12 military working dogs stood rigid on the tarmac, not barking, not straining, just refusing. "Move," Collins barked, yanking Rex's leash. The Belgian Malinois didn't even look at him. That alone made Collins uneasy. Rex had pulled him out of a collapsed building once, had stayed silent for hours during an overwatch that saved a platoon. That dog didn't disobey. Behind him, 11 more dogs had gone just as still. Handlers tugged, cursed, pleaded. Nothing. And then Collins saw her. She stood near the edge of the airstrip, half hidden behind ammunition crates, smaller than anyone else there. Dust-streaked jacket, a medical backpack slung over one shoulder like it barely belonged to her. Her posture was quiet, too quiet for a civilian caught in an active evacuation. "Hey," Collins shouted. "Civilian, clear the strip." She stopped, didn't argue, didn't explain, just lowered her eyes like she'd already accepted being invisible. Someone laughed nearby. "She think this is a ride share," a voice said. Another laugh, sharp, mean. The woman stepped back once, just once. Rex growled. Low, controlled, wrong. Then another dog did. Then another. 12 heads turned in perfect unison. Collins felt something cold settle in his gut. What the hell? Handlers tried commands, sharp ones, gentle ones, familiar ones spoken with the voices the dogs trusted most. Nothing. The dogs weren't panicking. They were focused. On her. She sat down on an empty crate as if she'd been invited, moved like someone conserving energy, like someone who knew exactly how long they might need to stay alive. Corporal Maria Diaz noticed the stance, the knees bent, the feet planted. That wasn't fear. That was readiness. "Maybe she's got treats," Diaz muttered, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land. Collins didn't respond. Rex's leash had gone slack. The dog wasn't pulling anymore. He was waiting. "Load them," Collins snapped. "Now." Burke dragged Shadow toward the helicopter. 3 steps. Then the German shepherd stopped like he'd hit a wall. A sound escaped his throat, not a whine, not fear. Recognition. Rex broke free. The leash slipped, sand sprayed as he ran. Collins reached for his sidearm without thinking. "That dog's gone rogue." "No." The word cut through the noise. Calm, steady, female. The woman stood between Collins and the dog before he realized she'd moved. Rex sat. Perfectly. 12 dogs followed. The world seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, no one spoke. Then someone said, "Who the hell is she?" Elena Martinez didn't answer. She knelt instead, whispered something no one could hear. And 12 military dogs, trained to ignore pain, explosions, death itself, lowered their heads like they'd come home. Something in Collins' chest cracked open. This wasn't obedience. This was memory. And whatever the dogs remembered. It wasn't finished yet. Why did the oldest handler on the strip suddenly take off his helmet? The moment stretched too long. Rotor wash screamed overhead. Radios crackled with incoming artillery warnings, yet no one moved. 12 dogs held formation around the kneeling woman like a living wall, their bodies angled outward, protective, disciplined. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was control. Sergeant Major Torres had seen that posture before. Not here, Not like this. His scarred hand trembled slightly as he lifted his helmet off, as if the weight of it had suddenly become unbearable. "I've seen her," he said quietly. No one heard him at first. Then Collins turned. "What?" Torres didn't answer immediately. His eyes were locked on the woman's shoulders, the way she held herself, relaxed but ready. The way her head tilted not toward sound but toward threat. Subtle things. Things only soldiers noticed. "I've seen her before," he repeated, louder now. Lieutenant Hayes scoffed. "Sir, with respect, this is not the time." "Kandahar," Torres said. The word landed heavy. "A place no one liked to remember." Collins felt the air change. "You're sure?" Torres nodded once. 3 years ago, Convoy Bravo, we were pinned, losing people fast." His jaw tightened. "And then dogs came out of nowhere." Every handler froze. "What dogs?" Diaz asked. "Not ours," Torres said. "Different, faster, smarter. They didn't just attack, they coordinated." His gaze never left Alina. "And there was a woman with them." Alina's hand stilled on Rex's fur. She didn't look up. Hayes laughed nervously. "Sir, that unit was wiped out. Everyone KIA." "I know," Torres said. "I watched the explosion." Silence fell like a dropped weapon. Another shell landed in the distance, closer now. Colonel Harrison emerged from the second Chinook, his expression already carved from stone. "Why aren't we airborne?" Collins gestured helplessly. "Sir, the dogs won't board." Harrison's eyes swept the scene, taking in the impossible formation, the kneeling woman at its center. He frowned. "Who is that?" "Alina Martinez," Collins said, "medical volunteer." Harrison studied her the way generals studied maps, looking for truth beneath the surface. "Volunteer," he repeated, unconvinced. As if sensing the scrutiny, Alina finally looked up. Her eyes met his, and something passed between them. Not recognition. Assessment. She stood slowly, deliberately, making no sudden movements. The dogs rose with her, mirroring her pace. "I can get them on the helicopter," she said. Her voice didn't shake. Hayes snapped. "You're not in charge here." "No," she agreed, "I'm not." She looked at the dogs, softened. "But they won't leave without me." That should have sounded arrogant. It didn't. Harrison weighed the sky, the dogs, the artillery timeline ticking down in his head. "You come with them," he decided. "We'll sort the rest later." Hayes opened his mouth, closed it. Orders were orders. Inside the Chinook, the dogs settled instantly. Quiet, calm, as if this was always how it was supposed to be. Collins sat opposite Alina, watching her from beneath lowered brows. "Start talking." She didn't look at him. "I don't remember Kandahar." Torres leaned forward. "But you remember the dogs." "Yes." "How?" She swallowed. "Because they never left me." Burke pulled up a tablet, scrolling fast. "Sir, Shadow, Ghost, Viper." He looked up slowly. 3 dogs from that wiped unit survived." Collins' heart thudded. They were reassigned. "And they all stopped showing separation trauma 6 months ago," Burke said. "Same window." Alina closed her eyes. "I started dreaming about them," she said, "before I knew why." The helicopter banked. The base shrank below them. Torres spoke softly. "What was your name back then?" She hesitated. "A beat too long." "Maya," she said. "Maybe." Rex pressed closer. "Call sign?" Collins asked. Her breath hitched. "Phantom." No one spoke. The name was dead, officially. But the dogs shifted, tails wagging, ears perked, as if a command had finally been spoken correctly. Harrison exhaled slowly. "So the dead walked back into my evacuation." Alina met his gaze. "I didn't come back," she said. "I was never allowed to leave." Outside, the desert burned. Inside, 12 dogs kept watch. And for the first time in 3 years, Alina felt the weight of who she used to be pressing against the lie she'd been living. The past wasn't gone. It was waiting. And it was starting to remember her. Why did the dogs begin to whine the moment the helicopter touched down? The Chinook's wheels hadn't even settled when the sound started, low, anxious, threaded with something that felt like warning. Not fear, anticipation. Alina felt it too. The ramp dropped, floodlights cut through the dust. Camp Phoenix unfolded below them in hard lines and armed silhouettes. Soldiers stared. Some pointed. Others slowed, instinctively sensing that whatever was arriving wasn't routine. 12 dogs moved first. They flowed off the ramp as one unit, spreading into a defensive arc around Alina before a single handler could issue a command. It was instinctive, old, too precise to be coincidence. Jesus, Burke murmured, they've never trained together. Collins stepped off last, eyes scanning for threats, but his attention kept snapping back to the woman at the center of it all. She walked calmly, hands visible, posture neutral, but her eyes tracked everything. Exits, elevation, blind spots. She was remembering with her body. Military police approached, hands near weapons, protocol kicking in. Unknown civilian, one of them called, stepped forward for processing. Alina didn't move. The dogs did. A single step, not aggressive, just enough. The MP hesitated. Colonel Harrison appeared again, voice sharp. Stand down, she's with me. The words carried authority, but also something else. Protection. They escorted Alina into a temporary holding room. Bare walls, folding chair, 2 bright lights, too quiet. The dogs refused to stay outside. No one forced them. Interrogation began within the hour. Names, dates, locations. Alina answered what she could. And when she couldn't, she said so. I don't remember, became the most dangerous sentence in the room. One of the men from Washington, civilian clothes, eyes like glass, leaned forward. Amnesia is convenient. Her jaw tightened. So is believing your own paperwork. That earned her a look. Torres watched from the corner, arms crossed, unreadable. Collins stood closer than protocol required. You were declared KIA, the man said. Your unit annihilated, why show up now? Alina looked down at her hands, scarred, steady. I didn't show up, she said. I followed a feeling. A feeling. She nodded, like forgetting something important, like leaving a child somewhere and waking up every day knowing you hadn't gone back. The dogs pressed closer. The interrogator scoffed. Dogs don't. They do, Burke cut in quietly. They remember. The room shifted. Files were pulled. Images, grainy footage from Kandahar, burned vehicles, blurred figures. Tor's voice broke the silence. She drove into the kill zone. Alina flinched. Torres continued, eyes wet now. We were trapped. She didn't hesitate, just moved. The interrogator leaned in. And the cargo. Alina frowned. Cargo. Torres looked at Collins. Collins looked back. That word hadn't been in the story before. No one told us, Alina said slowly. We were just told it mattered. More than you, the man pressed. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Silence. Outside thunder rolled, or artillery, hard to tell anymore. Later, alone with the dogs, Alina finally let herself shake. Rex nudged her hand. Shadow pressed his head into her knee. Ghost lay across her feet like an anchor. I'm scared, she whispered. They stayed. That night the dreams came back stronger. Fire, heat, her voice yelling commands she didn't consciously know. Dogs moving through smoke like living shadows. A second explosion, not enemy fire. Friendly. She woke gasping. The memory wasn't whole yet. But the betrayal was starting to surface. And somewhere in the chain of command, someone was realizing she hadn't forgotten enough. The dogs knew it too. They didn't sleep. They watched the doors, waiting, because the past wasn't just catching up. It was closing in. Why did the guards outside her door suddenly stop answering their radios? Alina noticed the silence before anyone else did. Not because of training, though some part of her knew it was that, but because the dogs felt it first. Rex's ears lifted. Shadow rose to his feet without a sound. The others shifted, spreading subtly, bodies angling toward the door, toward the hallway beyond it. Something had changed. Alina sat up on the narrow cot, heart slowing instead of racing. That surprised her. Fear should have come first. Instead, there was clarity. A clean, sharp awareness like the moment before a storm broke. Footsteps echoed once in the corridor. Then nothing. No radio chatter, no casual voices, no boots moving with purpose. Just quiet. Collins had insisted she be kept in a secure medical annex instead of a cell. Observation, they'd called it, a compromise between protection and containment. 2 guards posted outside at all times, cameras in the corners, doors that locked from the outside. The dogs had refused to leave her. No one had pushed the issue. Now one of the cameras blinked. Once, then went dark. Alina's breath caught, not in panic, in recognition. "I know this," she whispered. Rex looked up at her, eyes steady, waiting. She slid off the cot slowly. The dogs tightened their formation without a word spoken. No commands, no signals she consciously remembered giving. Her body moved before her thoughts did. She crossed to the door and pressed her ear to the metal. Nothing. To nothing. "Friendly," she murmured, not to the dogs but to herself. "They're pretending to be." A memory surfaced, jagged and sharp. A briefing room. A voice saying, if you hear silence where there should be noise, assume compromise. Her hand trembled. She hadn't just been hidden for 3 years. She'd been preserved. The door lock clicked. Once. Twice. Unauthorized access. The dogs growled, not loud but deep enough to vibrate through bone. Alina raised a hand. They stilled. Footsteps resumed, careful now, measured, someone who knew exactly how close they were to danger. The door opened. A man stepped inside wearing a uniform that didn't quite fit the base. Wrong patch, right cut, the kind of detail most people missed. Not Alina. "Staff Sergeant Reyes," he said softly, "you're coming with us." Her name hit like a bullet. Behind him 2 more men, weapons low but ready, professional, calm. "Who sent you?" she asked. He smiled. "You know the answer to that." Her mind raced, not in fragments now but in connections. Kandahar, the convoy, the unexplained second blast, the amnesia, the volunteer's badge that had gotten her close to bases without raising flags. "They never wanted me dead," she said quietly. "They wanted me controllable." The man's smile tightened. "You were supposed to stay asleep." Rex lunged. Not at the man. At the door. The sound of bodies colliding echoed down the hall as the dogs surged forward, a coordinated wave of muscle and instinct. The intruders reacted fast, too fast, but not fast enough. Alina moved with them. She didn't remember how to fight. She just did. An elbow strike, a wrist twist, a weapon redirected into the wall instead of her chest. Her body flowed through the motions like they'd been waiting years for permission. Someone shouted. Someone fell. By the time Collins and Torres rounded the corner, weapons raised, the hallway was chaos. 1 man unconscious. Another pinned by ghost, teeth hovering a breath away from flesh. The third had backed himself against the wall, hands raised, terror finally cracking his composure. Collins stared. What the hell happened? Alina stood in the middle of it, chest heaving, eyes clear. "They came for me," she said. "Not to question me, to take me." Tor swore softly. The man against the wall laughed sharp, hysterical. You don't get it, she's not a liability, she's insurance. Collins turned on him. Explain. You think Operation Cerberus ended in Kandahar, the man spat. That convoy was phase 1. Elena felt the floor tilt. Cerberus wasn't about dogs, the man continued, or handlers, it was about proof. Proof of what? Collins demanded. The man's gaze locked on Elena, of who gave the order. Silence fell again, this time heavy with understanding. Tor's voice was barely audible. Friendly fire. The man nodded, not friendly, strategic. Elena's knees nearly buckled. The dogs pressed into her, grounding her, holding her upright. They wanted to erase the evidence, she said. Us. Yes, the man agreed. And when you didn't die, they adapted. The alarms finally sounded. Too late. By morning, the base was locked down. Communications restricted. Commands shuffled. The Washington team arrived with smiles too tight and questions too sharp. Elena watched it all from behind reinforced glass, dogs at her side. Harrison came to her just before sunrise. They're pushing hard, he said, calling you unstable, dangerous. And you, she asked. He met her eyes. I think they're afraid. She nodded. They should be. Memory was no longer trickling back. It was flooding. She remembered the cargo now, not what it was, but what it represented. Evidence, data, orders logged and hidden, a paper trail buried under bodies. You didn't just train dogs, Harrison said slowly. You created witnesses. Elena closed her eyes. Yes. The dogs weren't weapons. They were memory keepers. And they had never forgotten what she'd been ordered to protect. Somewhere far above Camp Phoenix, men in clean offices were realizing the same thing. The ghost they'd buried had teeth. And this time she wasn't alone. Why did the dogs suddenly refuse to eat? Elena noticed it during the quiet hour before dawn, when exhaustion finally pressed down on the base like a heavy hand. Trays of food sat untouched in the kennel area, water bowls barely disturbed. 12 dogs lay alert, eyes tracking shadows that didn't exist on the walls. Animals always knew first. She crouched beside Rex, fingers resting against the warm rise and fall of his ribs. What is it? She whispered. Rex didn't look at her. He looked past her, toward the sky. Camp Phoenix was locked down in name only. Guards doubled. Perimeters tightened. Radios buzzed with coded language that meant containment, not safety. Elena felt it in the way officers avoided her eyes, in how some spoke slower around her, as if calm tones could neutralize truth. Colonel Harrison had kept her close, not out of trust alone, but necessity. She was leverage now, a living contradiction to official records. And contradictions made people reckless. Torres joined her, lowering himself onto a crate with a grunt. Washington wants you moved. Elena didn't look up. Moved where? Black site. Somewhere you can't testify because there's nothing to testify to. She exhaled slowly. They're afraid of the dogs. Torres nodded. They should be. Night had brought fragments back. Not dreams this time, sequences. She remembered Kandahar clearly now. The convoy rerouted at the last second. Orders coming down through encrypted channels that didn't match mission parameters. The cargo container welded shut, stamped medical supply but weighing far too much. And the dogs, trained not just to attack or track, but to identify command voices, to recognize authority patterns, to remember who gave which order and when. She argued quietly, respectfully. They'd smiled, the way people did when they'd already decided. The explosion that wiped out her unit hadn't come from the hillside. It had come from below. Cerberus was never meant to come home, Elena said. Tor's eyes glistened. And you? They thought the blast took care of me, she swallowed. When it didn't, they buried me under medical discharge and memory gaps. Let me live small. A siren wailed short-coded. Incoming aircraft. Harrison appeared moments later, face grim. They're here. Elena stood. The dogs did too. A sleek transport jet cut through the sky, its insignia deliberately vague. The kind of plane that didn't file flight plans anyone could request. This is where it happens, Harrison said. They'll try to separate you. They won't, Elena replied. The dogs fanned out as the delegation arrived. 4 men, 1 woman, all smiles sharpened by intent. Suits under tactical jackets, plausible deniability in human form. One of them, a woman with silver hair and calm eyes, stepped forward. Ms. Martinez, we're here to take you somewhere safe. Elena studied her. Safe for who? The woman's smile didn't falter. For everyone. Rex growled. The woman glanced down. We can't bring the animals. That's not negotiable, Elena said. It is, the woman replied softly. They're government property. Elena felt something break inside her, not violently but cleanly, like a final thread snapping. No, she said, they're witnesses. The woman's eyes hardened. You're confused. I'm clear, Elena answered, clear enough to remember the order you gave. A ripple passed through the group. Tors stiffened. Harrison inhaled sharply. The woman recovered quickly. You don't have proof. Elena gestured to the dogs. I do. The standoff stretched. Then impossibly one of the dogs stepped forward, not Rex but Ghost, old, scarred, near retirement age. He sat and stared at the woman. Elena spoke quietly. He remembers your voice. The woman's composure cracked, just for a second. Enough. Take them, she snapped. Everything happened at once. Handlers moved to intercept. Guards shouted conflicting orders. A flashbang rolled across the tarmac. And the dogs moved. Not in chaos, in precision. They didn't attack soldiers, they blocked, redirected, created space around Elena like a living shield, non-lethal, controlled. Elena ran, not away but toward the comm center. Harrison followed without hesitation. Tors covered their flank. Inside, Elena slammed a drive into the terminal. Data she'd buried years ago began to upload, logs, voice prints, biometric markers tied to orders that had never officially existed. Broadcasting, she said, open channel. You'll burn everything, Harrison warned. She nodded, including me. Do it. Outside, the dogs held. Inside, truth spilled into the open air. Orders spoken in calm voices, dates, names. Silence followed. Not the dangerous kind. The listening kind. By the time the transmission ended, Elena was shaking, not from fear but release. They didn't arrest her that night. They couldn't. Too many people had heard. At sunrise, the dogs finally ate. Elena sat among them, exhausted beyond words. Harrison approached quietly. What happens now? He asked. She looked out at the light creeping over the desert. Now, she said, we wait to see if dignity still matters. Rex rested his head on her knee. They'd done their part. Whatever came next would have to answer to it. Why did Elena step forward when everyone else stepped back? The air on the tarmac felt heavier than it had any right to be. Not with smoke, not with dust, with consequence. News travels strangely on military bases. It doesn't rush, it seeps. By mid-morning, Camp Phoenix knew. Not the details, never the details, but the shape of it. Something had cracked. Something sealed for years had been spoken aloud. People avoided Elena's eyes. Not out of contempt. Out of recognition. The delegation was gone. No dramatic arrests. No public apology. Just quiet vehicles leaving through secured gates, their confidence stripped down to procedure. Orders came through later, carefully worded, deliberately vague. pending review, temporary reassignment, operational pause. Language designed to stall time. But time was no longer on their side. Alina sat on the edge of the kennel platform, boots dangling, Rex pressed against her thigh. The others rested close, bodies touching, a shared warmth that felt earned. For the first time since Kandahar, she felt the strange absence of vigilance. Not peace exactly, but permission to breathe. Tours approached slowly. They're requesting a formal statement. She nodded, I know. You don't have to, he said. You've already done enough. Alina looked at him, really looked, at the lines time and guilt had carved into his face. That's the problem, she said softly. I haven't. Inside the command building, the room was full without feeling crowded. Officers, legal observers, a medic stationed discreetly near the door. Harrison stood at the back, arms crossed, jaw tight. Alina stood alone at the center. No uniform, no rank insignia. Just her. They asked her to recount the mission. She did. Not theatrically, not angrily, just clearly, dates, locations. The moment she realized the orders didn't align, the second blast, waking up in a field hospital with pieces of herself missing, told she was lucky to be alive. And the dogs, someone asked. Alina paused. They were trained to obey, she said. But more than that, they were trained to recognize responsibility, to know the difference between authority and intent. A murmur passed through the room. They didn't refuse the helicopter because they were confused, she continued. They refused because leaving would have meant forgetting. She swallowed. And forgetting would have made us complicit. No one interrupted her. When she finished, there was no applause, no dramatic reaction. Just silence. The kind that follows truth when it lands without armor. Later, as the sun dipped low, Alina walked the perimeter alone. The dogs followed at a respectful distance, giving her space she hadn't realized she needed. The desert stretched out before her, vast and indifferent. She thought of all the places she'd lived quietly these past years. Clinics, temporary shelters, faces she'd helped and then left behind. She'd thought anonymity was safety. It was just another kind of erasure. Harrison joined her near the fence line. They're recommending full reinstatement, he said, with commendation. She almost laughed. That's not what this was about. I know, he replied. That's why it matters. She looked back at the dogs, 12 silhouettes against the fading light. What happens to them? They're being reassigned, Harrison said. Together, permanent unit, handler of record. He hesitated. Alina Martinez. Her chest tightened. I don't know if I can be what they need, she admitted. Harrison shook his head. They already decided you are. Night fell gently. No alarms, no rotors, just stars appearing one by one. Alina lay on the ground among the dogs, her head resting against Rex's shoulder. She felt tired in a way that didn't scare her. A tiredness that came after holding something heavy for too long and finally setting it down. She thought of the moment at the extraction point, the leash slipping from Colin's hand, the stillness, the choice. They could have boarded. They hadn't. Because loyalty isn't about commands. It's about conscience. In the days that followed, investigations would begin. Careers would quietly end. Reports would be rewritten with careful language. Not justice, not entirely. But accountability. And sometimes that was the beginning. On her last night at Camp Phoenix, Alina stood once more at the tarmac. Empty now. Quiet. She closed her eyes and let the memory play out, not as it had been, but as it was. The dogs refusing. The world pausing. The truth stepping forward. She knelt and pressed her forehead to the ground. The dogs gathered around her, not as shields this time, but as companions. We're still here, she whispered. They were. And that mattered. Because sometimes dignity doesn't shout. Sometimes it doesn't survive intact. Sometimes it's carried silently by those who remember when the world asks them to forget.